We're not like, you don't, or I heard that John is coming. Yes. But he's joining us for. He's here. This year on electronic. It's spirit. John, speaker.
Where you like, maybe at the end there. Okay, I think we'll get started. And I just want to I'd like to thank everybody for coming to the celebration of life of my mother, Eva Odette Meddings. And what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a short synopsis of her life and what what she was doing in her earlier part of her life. And then I'm going to ask anybody who's interested to give a little anecdote or a story about how they remembered, my mother, to come on. And then I'm going to ask some of those who are online if they want to say something. Then they can call my cell phone, and I'll give you my number a couple times through this talk, and you can write it down. And my cell phone number is 416-616-1799, and I'll say that again a little bit later. And so I'll get started with a little background on my mother. Eva Odette Meddings was born on April 30th in 1928 in Cheadle, a small town in the southeastern edge of Manchester. And her father was a postal clerk, and her mother had a bridal shop and for factory girls. And she, in fact, eventually made my mother's wedding dress, and which my sister Janet wore on her wedding. So it was passed down, and and they lived just above the store. And my mother ascribed her intense interest in women's clothing to the influence of her mother's strong sense of color and fashion. And the other interesting thing, I just found this out. My brother Neil did some research on my grandfather, but it turns out he was an enthusiastic fly fisherman, and I think Neil probably inherited some of those genes because Neil's the same. But he says mostly what they did was they practiced dry casting a fly line into a hoop on the grass in the backyard. That was the extent of it. But my mother did very well at school, and she applied for university, entered medical school, and had a full scholarship for the time she was there. But she later told us it wasn't really a full scholarship. It didn't provide anything for food. And she ascribes her short stature, 5'1" and a bit, that's how she's described herself, because of the lack of food she had during university. But she was also on the University of Manchester swim team, and her particular area of training was fancy dives off the high board. And she went on to obtain a diploma in pediatrics, which in Canada would be a family physician with an interest in pediatrics. She met our father, John Martin Hagen, while she trained in Stockport Hospital. Sorry, I don't know who that is. While she trained in Stockport Port Hospital in the north of England, and she tells a story that she was in the process of applying for work as a physician in an underserviced country in the East. And when she first met our dad on a ward in the hospital, after 1 week, she let her application lapse. So she, and this was obviously one of the most important decisions in her life, and for us as kids as well. I mean, we wouldn't be here if she hadn't done that. They were married in March 1954, and they felt that Canada held more opportunity for their children. And they worked for a year in Bonnyville, Alberta, in an Anglican-run hospital when they first emigrated to Canada. And then they moved to the far north in Aklavik. And this is where I was born, and my brother Roy was born in Aklavik as well. And my mother was the only other doctor, so my father delivered us. And after a couple of years in the north, they decided they were going to move to the big city of Edmonton, and my father entered anesthesia and subsequently joined the anesthesia group at the University of Alberta. And Neil was born in Edmonton shortly after they moved there. And my mother, she worked full-time as an assistant professor at the University of Alberta Medical School, where she taught anatomy. And she became responsible for admissions in the medical school, and she held that position for many years. And being the only medical school in Alberta at the time, she knew every single physician who would come in. So after about 19 years, she became one of the assistant registrars at the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Alberta. And she had several roles there, but the major role was oversight of complaints against physicians, and she was apparently very good at handling very difficult people and difficult situations. In 1975, our dad died suddenly in a scuba diving accident in Lake Minnewanka, and subsequently Mom met Basil Meddings, a PhD analytical chemist who worked for Sherritt Gordon Mines in Edmonton. And then life was really hectic because Basil had 5 kids, my mother had 4 kids, and so our Sunday evening tribe dinners were legendary with great food and great stories and warm times together. But Mom and Basil enjoyed traveling together, particularly to the Polynesian islands, and their favorite was Rangiora, and they went there, what was it, about 14 times, Basil?
It was 14 times in 12 consecutive years.
Yeah.
We liked it. It was where I proposed.
Wow. Yeah, so, and my mother loved going there as well. And, but when we were growing up, one of the most impactful aspects of our mother's life was her deep love of Jasper and spending time in the mountains. And as kids, we went on multi-day hikes in the summers and went downhill skiing in Marmot, often as often as every other weekend. And along with Dad's colleague, Tim Cameron, and 5 other families, they built the Lobstick in Jasper. And John Day has been looking after that part of it for almost 20 years now. And I think John's on watching this online. He wanted to come here, but his flight from Victoria got delayed because of fog. There was a lot of fog in Vancouver, so he's sorry he can't be here, but he's online. And I'll ask him to say something a bit later. So we spent Christmas holidays there as a family for almost 50 years in Jasper. And we missed maybe 2 Christmases during the entire time. And then we would bring our grandchildren and our children. And you can see a lot of the pictures up there that are from that time. In 1987, Mom and Basil moved to Vancouver, and they've been here since. My mom died peacefully on December 30th, 2025, in the arms of Basil, and they'd been together for almost 50 years. So that's the basic background, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a story, And then I'm going to ask other people to come up and speak. And if I don't ask you and you want to say something, please, let me know. So I came to visit my mom not that long ago. And I flew from Toronto, where I live, and I landed in Vancouver, took an Uber to where she was, and she'd just broken her leg and was recovering from that. And I walked into the room where she was, and she was sleeping. And so I sat on the chair next to the room and opened up my computer and started doing a little bit of work. And not long after that, my mom woke up and she turned to me and she said, "Hi, John." And she said it with such familiarity. It was as if she had seen me yesterday or the day before, when in fact it had been many months since I had seen her. And it turns out just before my mother's passing, she had short-term memory loss. You'd tell her something and she'd forget it within a few minutes, and she'd ask the same questions over and over again. But she would remember things from a long time ago. And so she turned to me and she says, "Where am I? And what am I doing here?" I said, "Mom, you broke your leg and you're getting better." And she thought about that for a minute and she said, "That was a silly thing to do. Why would I do that?" And I said, "Mom, you're getting old." And she goes, "Am I? How old am I?" And I go, "Mom, you're pushing 100. And she goes, Nah. And she thought about that for a while. And then she turned to me and she said, "Did I have a good life?" Yeah. And so right away, you start, tears, start getting. I was afraid I didn't want to embarrass myself, so I try not to cry. And I turned to her, I said, "Mom, you had the best life." And we talked about the things we did as children, the hikes we went on, the skiing, the downhill skiing. And we talked about the traveling we did and, the great times. And I said, "Mom, I remember a story you told me about when we were little. And we were camping in the Miette camping hot springs. I think there's a picture of it here somewhere. You'll see we're all really little. And we had our own tent as kids. And Mom, you and Dad had a yellow tent. And a little yellow tent. And I said, "Do you remember that little yellow tent, Mom?" And she thought about it for a minute, and her eyes sparkled, and her face lit up. And she goes, "Yeah, I remember that tent." I said, "Mom, you turned to me, and you told me that you looked out of your window, and it was raining, and it was cold, and you saw that you were surrounded by majestic mountains, and you smelled that smell of pines and peat moss, and the smell's particular for Jasper. It's the only place you get that scent. And you told me you felt really happy. And you told me that this is what you love most about being here. And that love of life and the love of being in nature and happiness, you pass to your kids, and we've passed to our kids, and our kids are passing them on to their kids. And I told them about Ashley, who's here with us today, who spent 1.5 years traveling the world, and she went to Korea and taught English, and she learned lessons in life that you only learn from extensive traveling. And I told her about Chloe, my other daughter, who's now in Australia, and I think she's online now listening to us here. And she couldn't be here either because when I first told her the news about my mom, she was on a caravan. She has a caravan, and they travel around Southern Australia. She was on for a month. She had it planned. And all through that month, she was describing this nice, lovely smell of salt air coming into her caravan, and the walks on the beach she did with Steve, her husband, and her daughter, Skylar. And she was really happy. And it's this kind of happiness that you've passed on to all of us. And if I were to talk to you today, if I could carry on this conversation today, I'd tell you, you wouldn't know this. But on the night you died, Basil, your husband of almost 50 years, held you in his arms until you took your last breath. And this is the kind of love that Basil had for you. And this is the kind of love that you've spread to all of us. And I would tell you that is what I am truly grateful of, the love of life and what you've passed on to us. And it continues to be passed on to our kids and on to their kids. And so, thank you. That's what I would tell you. So that's my little story. And Neil, you want to say something?
Thanks very much. Well, not easy to stand up and talk after that. Thank you, John. I'm going to not use the microphone. John, the cinematographer, are you okay with that? You want me to use this? Okay. So I'm going to hold it perfectly still so that it doesn't crackle and it does keep working. I'm Neil, the youngest of four. So awesome to see all of you. I'm going to tell a couple of, well, three brief stories about what it was like to have a mother bigger than life. The first story, you'll see actually one of the photographs is of Howes Pass in Jasper. And I think I was about 16, and my parents said, yeah, we're going to go dog sledding up Howes Pass and go camping in the winter. They were crazy, and this was a new venture for them, but in no way a surprise. So off they went, and they came back a day early. And I was, what happened? Well, we were asleep in the tent, pitch black, way up at the top of Howes Pass. And, they had a dog sled. The dogs were tied up at a tree. And in the night, poke, one of the dogs had gotten loose, kept on poking its nose into the tent. And so they kind of both, and they jumped and they batted the dog's nose. Get back to bed. They got up in the morning. The dogs were tied on the tree. This is middle of March. The tent was surrounded by bear tracks. And they came back a day early. A second story I want to tell you about my mother is what it was like for me as a medical student. Often, people would come up to me, they'd see my name tag, and they'd say, are you Odette's son? And inevitably it was a man who would say things like, oh, she was quite a dresser. And she was a very good teacher, and she was very smart. Or sometimes, yeah, good-looking woman. She was with the college. Don't mess with Odette. And as the decades went by, I kid you not, at Foothills, every year, increasingly older men with grayer hair or no hair would come up to me, you Odette's son? And it was always the same story. So bigger than life, one final story. When I was a medical student, my mother told me a little bit about what it was like to take care of patients in the very far north of Canada in the 1950s. And one of the stories, I just finished a lecture on plastic surgery, and she said, I'll tell you an interesting plastic surgery story. In Aklavik, in the summer, there's a run of whitefish that comes up, I think it's the Coppermine River. And there are fishing camps, and they've got boats and nets. And a guy got his finger caught in the net and lost his finger. And they bring him in, and they didn't know what to do. So I suspect they got the RCMP to radio to the U of A hospital. They got a hold of a plastic surgeon, and the plastic surgeon, my mother told me, said, look, don't just cut off the stump because it'll get in the way and you can't use the hand very well. Cut it way down here, cut out that extra bone, sew it together, and it actually looks a lot nicer. Now, unbeknownst to them, that is a Ray procedure. It's widely used now, but back then it was kind of a new thing. They did it. And I thought, well, that's very cool. Scroll forward 60 years. I'm in Inuvik. I'm doing some work for the Northwest Territories Department of Health. And it's a social place. I'm meeting all sorts of people. This guy comes up to me. He says, Neil, are you Odette's son? So it turns out this guy, his best friend, his dad was that man. And he, for years, would be talking, and then someone would say, hey, you're missing a finger. And he would proudly hold up his hand, and he'd say, yeah, it looks pretty good, doesn't it? And then the rest of the story is, it turns out that someone did find his finger. It was a fish. And shortly after his hand was actually sewn together, someone came banging on his door. You get to the fish factory because there's a ring. And he tore down there because he thought someone was going to take his ring. And he then put the ring on another finger. So my mother, bigger than life, those are 3 stories.
Well, thank you very much, Neil. And Janet, did you want to say a few things, or?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Put the microphone closer.
Can you hear me now?
Put it right close to your mouth.
There. Is that better? Thank you. I'm nervous about speaking. My name is Janet. I'm the eldest of the Hagans, the only daughter. I had a difficult relationship with my mother. And I think the nadir of it all, of not getting along, was when I was 12 and a half for some strange reason. And one day Mom says to me, I've got a conference in Montreal. Would you like to come? They're going to have a children's program, and we can go watch the filming of Reach for the Top, and we can go and see Expo 67. So I nodded. The reason I nodded was I was not talking to my mother. And I think it was because she had been right about something and I had been wrong about something, but I was never going to let her know that. So I thought, okay, we can go together and I'll communicate by nonverbal gestures and by writing things down, and then we can talk. So we got on the plane to go from Edmonton to Montreal, and by the time the plane took off, we were talking. And that was okay. And then we got to Montreal, and we were staying in the university residence. The room was very tiny, and it had a single bed and a brown linoleum floor that did not look very clean. So I said, that's okay. I'll sleep on the floor. And Mom just said, well, you're welcome to share this tiny, narrow cot of a bed with me. There's no problem. I said, no way. I'll sleep on the floor. So I get down on the floor, the lights get turned out, and then the cockroaches came. So I think I lasted 5 seconds. And then I was sharing this bed with her, even though 2 days before we were not talking to each other. But that was Mom. And I think that was the first of the holidays with the kids that the parents took us for age 12 to 13 away. The most difficult time of your life to bond. And so thank you, Mom, for that story, for that giving me that gift. Do I have another one? One more story. When I was 6, my parents decided it was time to make the big trip back to the old country to see the relatives that we had never met, except when we were very, very small and we didn't remember. So we went to England by plane. This is 1962, I believe. I was 6, John was 5, Roy was 3.5, and Neil was 2. And we had a wonderful time visiting grandparents, both sides, in Northern England and Scotland. Time to come back. Dad had to fly back early because he had to go back to work. And Mom said, I want these kids to really see how big the world is. So we went by boat from the south coast of England to Montreal on the ocean liner. I think it took 5 days. So there was Mom with us kids. And then in Montreal, we got on the train and we traveled, was it 3 or 4 days across Canada, Mom, just with Mom, to see how big Canada was. And I think we all remember that holiday a lot. The one story I really think about and how brave my mom was and how adventuresome. We got to Montreal, and I don't know what happened, but we had to get from the docks to the train station, and we had, for some reason, to go by foot part of the way. So we're crossing this enormous traffic circle in downtown Montreal, and there's traffic everywhere. And Mom said, hold hands. And we had a set routine, a family routine of how we held hands. So my mom had Neil holding his hand. Neil had Roy. Roy had me, and then John at the end, or whatever it was. I can't remember exactly, but I remember John was at the end, and I was somewhere in the middle. And we crossed that traffic. Traffic came to a halt, and we just walked right through 6 lanes of traffic, the 4 of us. The 5 of us together. And that says a lot about my mom and how she brought us up. That's my stories.
Okay, thank you. Roy, did you want to say anything, or?
Just a brief something that the doctors could probably relate to. Okay, thanks, Jan. Yeah, I was a drug rep for a while, and went to. I sometimes go downtown and stop in and see her. So I waltzed into the college, and as usual, just walked by all the ladies and all the guys waiting to talk to her, and guys in business suits, and walked into her office, and she said, close the door. So I closed the door, and she stared at the door and said, those guys, she said, those men are not going to bully me. And I said, I picked the wrong day to come in. I said, what is it? It was the triple prescription was just being introduced at the time. And what that concept is that doctors are monitored how much they're writing certain drugs. And if they're more than 2 standard deviations away from the mean, they get a call from the college that says get back in line, whatever. I don't know the details. But she was so angry, she pointed at the door. I said, okay, thanks, nice, Mama, I'll go. And I walked by these 3 big guys in suits from a pharmaceutical company, and they looked at me, and I said, hi, I'm a drug rep too. And they said, can you get us in there? And I said, excuse me? No, she's really busy. And they both, all three looked at each other and nodded and got up and walked out. And just because they gone from the head office, Montreal, Toronto, and flown to Edmonton to see Mom to get her to not make certain drugs triple prescription, which was, that was the cutting edge of medicine, making sure that we were monitoring what drugs are being monitored or overprescribed or illegally used by drug addicts, stuff like that. And so maybe some of you doctors can relate to that concept. And just a few other comments would be, I remember Mom saying first time they were up in Jasper and they woke up and out of the tent, stuck her head out of the tent and there was banging. What it was rams of hitting their heads against each other right outside of the tent. And she said, "This is home." And that's about it. I could go on about it.
Okay, so Marion, did you want to say something? Yeah.
I don't know, I used to be a college instructor, can you hear me?
But the
I want you to use the microphone for the
online
streaming.
Oh, for the streaming people, okay, anyway. How wonderful to see people here. Roy, I haven't seen you for many, many years. I think I was up in Jasper, the extended family. So heartbreaking. So I've written something to Odette. Not you, Basil, Odette.
She was much better than me.
I think you're right. Every time we anticipated your and Basil's arrival, Jasper or Edmonton, we would hold our breath. What designer ensemble would she be wearing? From the top of her finely coiffed head to her tiny toes, color and drama, she would make a statement. The rest of the great unwashed, read other owners female, would do their best to topple our fellow shareholder from her perch. And of course, you had your charming, tall, handsome Prince Charming to complete what was always a photo moment. I don't think a time went by at our social events, at our meetings, that somebody didn't take a picture of you two because, you know, you were the king and the queen, right? Those of us that were there. Your love for each other was obvious and captivating. Basil often making some witty conversations and observations, and Odette always had a fast zinger back to him. If you didn't know them well, you wouldn't understand it. You go, oh my goodness, this couple's having a bit of a spat here. It was a love spat for sure. Odette, we miss your charm, your humor, your great intelligence, and your grace. We hold close our wonderful memories around our love of Jasper, and our loss of our last original is you, Odette. So it makes it a painful farewell for those of us in the lower generations, you know, people like me that's only 39. No, I mean, sort of add a few decades to that. But we have all the different generations now, and Odette was the last of the original owners. And I believe we saw a photograph of when they first built the Lobstick, which is the most memorable photograph of all the owners. And as I recall, I think the original investment, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was $20,000. $20,000. And now, are you going to speak? Yeah, of course you are. He can explain. He can explain more about that. But anyway, we miss you. You were such a spark. You were a pistol. You were so intelligent and charming. and always gracious and inclusive, no matter at what level of life you were at, whether you were some big poobah somewhere or if you were just a Sioux cook in the kitchen. And that was one of the things I love best about her. God bless you, Odette. We really miss you terribly.
Oh, thank you. That was lovely. Mike, would you like to say a few words?
Okay. Hello, everyone. For those of you who might not know me, my name is Mike Wetmore, and I have had the fortune of working for Odette for the past 45 years. In fact, I first met Odette in September of 1982 when she hired me. You can imagine that. So many years ago. And my funny story about her was that day, I remember driving, it was actually to Gene Forrest's home. We went to Gene's home. Odette was there, and another gentleman by the name of Mickey Holland, who were all original shareholders of the Jazz Day Group, for those of you who are familiar with it. And I remember walking into this home, and I was a little nervous. I was a young kid back then. I was 12, and I walked into the room and met these people, these beautiful people, all three of them actually. And so we go ahead, we proceed with this panel of people, and they're peppering me with questions and all those kinds of things, and it was stressful, you know. And I remember at one point, you know, in this interview process, Mickey Holland, who was always an interesting chap, and he says, Mike, he says, "Are you Catholic?" And it was like, and I remember Odette, she was like beside herself, and Gene, and the two of them were so angry with your dad, maybe. They dressed him down, and I'm just sitting here at this whole thing, and I'm thinking, oh my God, you know. I was, just to be clear. And so I'm not sure if that's what got me the job or not, but by that measure, I was hired, and I spent the last 45 years of my life with this beautiful group, but especially this beautiful woman, Odette, who I have such great memories of her, and her presence, and the things that Marilyn, that you mentioned about her grace and her beauty, and she would take over the space. She would walk into a room with this gentleman over here, and she was so special, and she was always so down to earth with our amazing staff through the years, with our people, and she was just this very, very special lady. And I always remember, you know, her and Basil sitting together, having a glass of wine perhaps, or walking along, or reading, sitting in the Skyline room, the two of you sitting, reading together in deep love for one another. And the two of you are inspiring, honestly. It was a love of decades, and it really was for all of us. So for me personally, I would have to say thank you, Odette, for, you know, hiring me, for giving me the opportunity to spend an amazing life, because I've had an amazing life in Jasper because of her. And without her, I would not be there. And so she's so special, and she will be missed in my heart as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. That was really heartfelt, and she had a great deal of respect for you. She would mention you many times. So thank you so much. Ashley, did you want to say a few things, or it's my daughter Ashley, one of Odette's grandchildren.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Ashley. I'm Grandma Odette's eldest grandchild on this side of the family. It is a rare privilege to stand here and celebrate a life that spanned nearly a century. 97 years of brilliance, resilience, and unwavering love. To look at my Grandma Odette's life is to look at a masterclass in breaking barriers. In the 1950s, when the world told women their place was anywhere but the lecture hall, she persevered in the face of adversity and became a doctor. As if that wasn't enough, she then pursued a PhD and became a true scholar of her time. Her intellect was matched by her integrity, When she sat on the board of physicians, she was the guardian of her profession. She had the courage to revoke the licenses of those who failed their patients, proving that for her, medicine was a sacred trust. That sharp, inquisitive mind never stopped working, and she made sure her grandkids didn't either. She was an insatiable reader, and perhaps the greatest blessing she gave us was her love of books. She made it her mission to fill our lives with stories and knowledge. We were all the lucky recipients of her repeated gifts, book after book, carefully chosen. In those pages, she wasn't just giving us paper and ink. She was giving us the tools to understand the world just as she had. Beyond the white coat and the boardrooms, however, she was the woman we knew in the quiet, joyful moments. When I think of her, I see our Jasper pizza and cookie dough nights, which always seemed to end with the chaos of a piñata. I remember sitting in the Skylight Lounge, completely captivated by as she spun amazing stories of her long and storied life. But my most cherished memory is the trip to Vancouver when I turned 12. Sounds like a theme. I flew as a minor to spend a week with her, Granddad Basil, and Ian. She turned that week into an adventure I'll never forget. Salmon fishing, tours in bush planes, and bouncing across the waves in a Zodiac to see the seals. What also stands out from that trip is that she didn't blink when I asked to bring my 11-month-old puppy, Lady, along. Dad, I have no idea how you let me do that. Despite what I'm sure was an annoyance to have a puppy around, Grandma welcomed us both with open arms. That's just the type of person she was. Life tested her as much as she tested the world. She endured the heartbreak of losing her first husband in a tragic accident, yet her heart remained open. When she found Basil, she found a partner who matched her strength with a gentle, enduring devotion. For decades, Granddad Basil was her anchor. Their love story ended in the most touching way possible, with her taking her last breath exactly where she belonged, safe in his arms. She leaves us at 97, not just as a pioneer of medicine, but as a woman who taught us that you can be incredibly tough, fiercely principled, and yet still make time for pizza puppies and a good book. In closing, here's to my Grandma Odette, a life well lived, a career well served, and a grandmother who will never be forgotten. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Ashley. That was really sweet. Mike, did you want to say something? Or I kind of put you on the spot, but are you okay? Does any of the grandchildren here want to say anything? You're welcome to come up and say something. If not, I think John Day is online, and my mother had a great deal of respect for John Day, and if John, you can call, my number is 416-616-1799, and I'll put you on speakerphone here so everyone can hear you. We were able to get it fixed for him, or like when you spoke to him, it worked for him? Yeah, if he has to call that way. Okay. Yeah, so I think if there's.
Do you want me to call John?
Okay, maybe try and call him and see if he can call him. If anybody wants to say any kind of story about my mother. Oh, here he is. Okay. Hello, John.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
John, put your phone on speakerphone.
It's on speakerphone. Okay, try again, John.
Can you hear me?
Okay, try again.
Is this better?
No, you can't hear. Try again.
Can you hear me all right?
Oh, you can hear now. Okay, great, John. Yeah.
Yeah, I did get online actually, so I saw many of the speeches. So very, very touching. So, I'm okay to speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I got to the airport and they canceled the flight at the last minute because it's a beautiful sunny day here in Victoria, but I guess you fogged me out in Vancouver, so I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I really wanted to. So I guess I have a lot of good thoughts and memories of Odette, and one of the early ones was Odette as a surgeon and taking off all of her jewelry pre-surgery, and so I heard many stories about that, about how striking that was at that time as a female surgeon. Another thing that Odette was always well known for was her fashion, and my kids are always pointing out what Odette was wearing today, how glamorous she was. And I think they had great admiration for her taste and her style. And she always treated my children with interest and respect, and they always had fond memories of her. One of my memories of Odette with Basil was being in the Lobstick and opening my door to the hallway and finding these two white albino ponies running up and down the hallway before real horses. They were their Great Pyrenees dogs. How they ever traveled with those dogs, they seemed to, but it was clear that the dogs were part of their family and part of the family at Mountain Park Lodges, so that was a memory I had of them as well. We often get asked, who do you think has a good marriage? Who has a great marriage out there? And I always used to use the example of Basil and Odette, because I thought they were a pretty perfect couple. They had so much energy for each other. They were so lighthearted with each other, and they displayed such tenderness to each other that I thought, gosh, I mean, that's a pretty successful marriage. And I always felt the benefit of seeing how those two would treat each other as a prime example of what a great relationship is. But I was always fortunate to have that as not just a business partner, but as a friend, and always appreciated the questions that she and Basil had. And so it wasn't just a question of them raising something. They would often raise something that was a real value to the company, a real insight about the company, a real insight about what we could do or should do, or why were we doing something, because we did a lot of things over the years. And Basil and Odette were always very supportive of that, as were the other members of the Hagen family. But they asked good questions, interested, but they were always trying to be supportive. And that support was very meaningful to me over the years, because we did a lot of things over many decades, but they always made a contribution, and Odette was always interested in not just what's happening in the company, but what's in the best interest of everybody around the table. I think that was a real priority for her. But it's a pretty unique thing to have partnerships that last over 60 years. I can't think of many that have, quite frankly. But it's the character and integrity of people like Odette who made it possible. I always look forward to seeing Odette and Basil together at the meetings, because you walk into a room and they had all this positive energy, and their faces would lighten up, they'd brighten up, they would take up the room, as someone else said, and they were always looking forward to seeing people. And I know they must have found every single way there is to get to Jasper, whether it was train or car or whatever way they came to Jasper in all sorts of ways, but they were always there. And they always made a contribution. And I really have to say, I couldn't have imagined having a better partner. In all the decades of knowing Odette and Basil together, I can't think of one single negative experience, which is saying something, because we went through a lot of changes and a lot of growth and a lot of ups and downs in the world, and but not once can I think of a negative experience, and that's it shows her values that made us all better, and those sorts of values can't be replaced. So one thing about Odette is she seemed to have an intelligence that would shine through no matter what. So it's like an innately intelligent person, no matter what the subject is, whether it was medicine or science or buying a ski hill or getting riding stable business, whatever it was, she always had an insight. She and Basil always had comments, but it's that innate intelligence of a person that's really irreplaceable. So it's a unique quality that she had. We were the beneficiaries. She will always be missed. MPL will never be quite the same without her. So just wanted to say we all appreciated and benefited from knowing Odette and being our friend all these years, and MPL will never be quite the same without her. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you very, very much, John. I think you know this, but my mother was a very keen judge of character. Like you could walk into a room and she could tell you many things about you that you didn't even know yourself. And as children, we didn't even try and make stuff up because we knew, well, we would try, but it did, it never went well. And what my mother thought of you was of the highest degree of integrity and honesty and hard work and selflessness. And we all know it's because of you that the Jazz Day was a success. You were the kingpin for that. And my mother, whenever she talked about you, it was always in the highest regard. And she had the most respect for you. So thank you for everything you did for her. You were a huge part of her life, and it was great hearing those kind words you said about her. That was very good. So thank you very much.
Thank you. She was the motivator for us all.
Okay, John. Thanks. I'll hang up now. See if anybody else from the online portion wants to say anything. See. Okay, I don't know if anybody wants to say anything else, but Basil, did you want to say something? Maybe Basil, I'll just say one thing about a story actually you told me. I'll just say one quick story about, hang on, somebody's calling. Oh. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, hi. This is David, or?
Yeah, it's David.
Okay, yeah. I think I have you on speakerphone now, so you can say something.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, John. Hello, everybody. Really, really happy to be joining you all from Geneva. I've got, I suppose, from the Netting side of the family, a different perspective. Sorry, John, can you hear me? I can turn off my.
We can hear you. We can hear you very well.
Excellent. Okay, good. Yeah, it's just been really, really wonderful to hear all the stories about Odette over the last hour. I've got so many memories of Odette as a person. I remember fantastic meals that she would make on Sundays. I remember drives that she would take me on the way in and out of med school at the U of A in Edmonton. And of course, I remember the very sort of larger than life person that she was in so many ways. As everybody said here, a real indomitable spirit, a very atypical woman, I can say, for her time, I think, as Ashley very correctly said. So it's been an absolute pleasure sort of getting to know her as in terms of my relationship with her. But I think more than anything else, I'm really moved by how much of a difference she's made in the life of my father. That's just been a really, really wonderful thing. And it's a bit of a different story with the netting side of the family, I suppose, because in our case, our parents divorced. And, all I can say is we were extremely happy that our father found somebody that he could spend the rest of his life with. And so I think on behalf of all of my brothers, if I can take that privilege, I just want to express to Odette just how much pleasure she's given to our father and how important that is for us. So we love you all very much, and thanks very much for giving us the opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much, Dave. That was really nice of you to call in. What time is it there? In Switzerland?
I think it's about 10:30 at night. Not too bad.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for calling in. Okay. So, Basil, I just want one quick story that you actually told me, and it was you were at some kind of function with my mother. It was some kind of medical function. I'm not sure which one, and you went to the washroom and you're washing your hands. There was another gentleman at the washing his hands as well, and he turned to you and said something. I mean, you'll correct me, I'm sure, but what's it like living with the most fearsome doctor in the province?
You're not quite right, John, but it was one of Mr. Peter Lougheed's cabinet, and he turned to me and said, I think I could, okay.
It's online, can hear you.
Okay. As he turned to me and said, I can have nothing but respect for anybody prepared to court the most feared doctor in the province. So, okay. Does this sound right? Okay.
Put the microphone close.
What, was it too quiet at the back? Okay, the joint life of Odette and I began when we were introduced at about 2 in the afternoon of Saturday, the 12th of June, 1976. At that time, we were 46 and 47. It came to an end at 11 o'clock at night on Monday, the 29th of December of last year. At that time, we were 96 and 97. So how do I summarize in a few minutes, in a few words, those nearly 50 years of what was for both of us a second marriage? Even before we were married, I couldn't help but realize that Odette combined beauty and brains, wit and charm, a fierce intelligence, and a very strong character. But she combined all of that with a very lively sense of humor, which happened to mesh very well with my own. And I think it was that combined sense of humor that helped us both for those 50 years. I suppose for every married man, he must at some stage in his life wish that his wife would see him as interesting, even exciting, possibly passionate. But a long time ago, Odette told me that she viewed me as comfortable to be with. Faint praise. But it summed it up rather well because we were comfortable with each other. Our marriage was a contented one. There was nothing to regret and nothing to wish for. And I think that sense of contentment carried on throughout our 50 years. Nothing to regret and nothing to wish for. Janet, John, where's Roy? And Neil. I cherished your mother for 50 years. I think I shall cherish her in my memories and thoughts for whatever years I have left. She was quite simply a wonderful lady. For me, she was nonpareil, without equal. And you four, I wish to thank you because, in a sense, you lent me your mother for the last 50 years of her life, and I thank you.
Well, thank you, Basil. I mean, as soon as we met you, we knew you were a great asset to our family, but more importantly, you told me you would look after my mother, and you did, and for that, we're all very, very grateful. So thank you very much. So I think we'll leave it at that. It's been an hour. We've been telling stories. And I'd just like to thank everybody for coming to this celebration of life of my mother. And it will be available on YouTube. Is that right? And you'll send us a link, or yeah, and in a few days. And also the picture show will be available as well. And it was nice, very, very nice. I'm sure my mother would have loved to see all of you here today. So on behalf of all of us, Neil, Roy, Basil, and Janet, and me, thank you for coming today. It was very special. So thank you. Okay. There's some snacks here. Help yourself, and feel free to hang out and talk, and we'll help yourself.
So we have this chicken salad.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I was supposed to know. That's so good.
Until she was 7 years old.
Oh, you already got stuff for it.
But I
Yeah.